Superhero movies have literally changed the way Hollywood works these days. They pretty much rule the box office as the audience loves to escape into these different worlds where superpowered heroes and villains exist. I applaud the creativity and personally enjoy the escape, but superhero films for the most part are exactly that, an escape. They rarely capture the human aspect of life, a side that we, the audience, can relate to. But when they do, it adds an extra layer to the film that's appreciated by many, whether it be the themes of morality, innocence, and corruption found in The Dark Knight, or themes of pride and racial discrimination found in Black Panther. However, it's 2017's Logan that I believe blends relatable themes in a superhero film the best that I've seen till this day. The characters grapple with many of the things we do throughout our lives, but I'll be breaking down three I believe show exactly why Logan relates to us. Many of us like to live life without regrets, but the truth is we aren't perfect. There are things we do regret, even if they're small moments within our lives. Regret is one of the biggest themes within Logan. We don't need to look any further for this than with Logan himself. This is a man who's lived for centuries and has had many lives, and most of them haven't been good ones. He spent the majority of them trying to find a purpose, and yet the one thing he's been really good at is being a soldier, a killing machine, the Wolverine. Granted, most of the people he's killed may have been terrible people. It's still a life full of death and violence. Violence that he can't escape regardless how much he tries. His friends, his significant others, you name it, have all been impacted. It's part of him, and a part he struggles to make peace with. I believe this is the point of him facing off against his clone in the film. For so long, Wolverine has been at war, but perhaps his biggest battle is the one with himself, and his clone represents this both literally and metaphorically. It's this duality in the film that really shows Wolverine has demons he needs to confront. He's forced to look in the mirror and see the literal version of himself he's tried so hard not to be. A side of himself he resents. Maybe if he never became Wolverine and simply just stayed Logan, things would have been better. Maybe less people die and he lives happily ever after. Yet this isn't the case, and it haunts him. I honestly believe this is why the clone kills Professor X as well. What a better way to show Logan dealing with guilt than having the last living person closest to him be killed by a version of himself. Logan isn't someone who's yet learned to cope with his past. He just kind of lives a life full of guilt and regret, regretting his days as Wolverine. In fact, I believe this is why the film is called Logan instead of Wolverine. The title reflects him choosing to be the better version of himself in his mind, and that's Logan, not Wolverine. Another obvious correlation we can resonate with is growing old and the subsequent challenges that come with this. Logan is not a film that glamorizes being a superhero. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite, and I know some people have issues with the film because of this. But I thought portraying these once valiant, intelligent, and charismatic characters as old, lost, and miserable was a masterful choice. Not only do we rarely see this side of our heroes, it also makes them more human and more relatable to us. Seeing Logan as a shell of himself, unable to fight how he used to, is kind of depressing, but it's also realistic. As we get older, there are things we sometimes struggle to do that once came easy to us. I'm reminded of this anytime I step foot on a basketball court. But going back to the movie, it's not just Logan this is noticeable with, but Professor X as well. He, even more so than Logan, is one of the smartest, gifted, and well-respected mutants in the world. Yet he's kind of portrayed as this old man who may be going slightly insane. He's unable to control his powers like he used to without medication. Here's one of the most powerful mutants reduced to being cared for. For how sad it is, it's another great aspect in the movie. It hits home for all of us because Logan takes care of Professor X in the same way many of us take care of our elders, the ones we looked up to and considered strong when we were younger. Later in the film, Laura ends up doing the same for Logan to a degree. Growing older is something that happens to all of us if we're lucky. It's inevitable, and so are the hardships that come with it. These themes in the film hit us because we experience them all as well in real life. However, growing old isn't always a bad thing. It doesn't always mean that we're going to be miserable or going down these hard times. It could mean that it allows us to take a look at our lives, and each day represents an opportunity to become better. This leads us to the last thing we'll talk about today. So I'll be honest, Logan was and still is one of the most depressing movies I've seen. It takes characters we've grown to love and shows them at their personal rock bottoms. However, what really makes Logan a great film is that it sends off the beloved Wolverine probably the best way possible. It's seeing him deal with his regrets, his life to this point, growing older, and the grief that makes his journey and eventual sacrifice for Laura that much better. For a man who's lost everything and has nothing left to live for, he sees her as a beacon of hope. Knowing he may perish in the process, it's worth it for him in order to save her. During the final moments, two things happen here that are worth mentioning. One being part of Laura's quote from the movie Shane that reads, "Now you go run home to your mother. Tell her everything's going to be all right. Tell her there's no more guns in the valley." This is significant because it reflects Wolverine's heroics towards the end of the film. He sacrificed his life and destroyed any possible threats for Laura and his friends. And now everything can hopefully be all right for them. The second being what Logan tells Laura just before he passes. "Don't be what they made you." This line pieces together the entire movie for me, and it's perfect coming from Logan himself, a man who has lived with the regrets and grief of being exactly what they made him to be. It's a powerful ending to a film, and as much as I love Wolverine and Hugh Jackman's portrayal of the character, this felt like the proper send-off to me. He takes in Laura, ultimately sacrifices his life for her, and in him doing so, he provides hope for the future, effectively completing his character arc. I can't think of a better ending for such a tormented, beloved character, but I can think of reasons why after almost 5 years, this film is still on my mind. It deals with a lot of realistic themes, more than were even expressed in this video that I covered. There's not many superhero movies that channel aspects of real life in such a raw way, and this is exactly why Logan relates to us. So I really wanted that to be the end of the video, but I feel like this shit's been kinda depressing, so I figured I'd give a general, slightly more lighthearted review and rating of the film really quickly. Logan is one of my favorite films of all time. I get the hate because it's kind of depressing and it's hard to even categorize it as a superhero movie, but I think that's the advantage of this film. I also appreciate us getting a rated R Wolverine for once. It made for some great action sequences and allowed Hugh Jackman to be the Wolverine we always wanted. I guess there are moments in the movie that do move a little slow, and if you're like my wife, it's also a film I can see you only watching one time because it is tough to get through. However, I definitely consider it a movie you at least need to see once. It's a great film, and I'd give Logan a 9 out of 10. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know this may divide some of you out there, but anyways, thanks for sticking with me to the end. Please hit that subscribe button as we're building a nice little community here. Thanks again for watching, and Happy New Year.